Hello and welcome to our Wellness Matters talk, Understanding and Managing Screen Addiction. I'm so grateful that you decided to spend a bit of time with us this evening. I know that even in the midst of COVID, there are other ways to spend your time. And so it's wonderful that you are here with us this evening. This is a part of a series of talks. We have a couple of them each month. We've got some that are coming up yet this fall and winter. Also, we did quite a number of them, 25 or so in the spring, and they are all on our website. You can see them on the blogs, and you're welcome to watch them as well. I was really excited about the topic for this evening. I think as well, most people, and especially as a parent, managing screen time and thinking about the issues around that are always at the top of my mind, and especially in COVID for a lot of us, it's become even more of an issue and a topic to think about. So thank you, Nicholas, for guiding us through this topic. And just to introduce you to our speaker this evening, Nicholas Renaud is a Canadian certified counselor, and he's worked in the field for over 15 years now. We are very fortunate to have him at Rivers Edge Counseling Center, and he has been on our team for the past 3 years, and he works with adults and teens, with couples and families. Nicholas works with a broad range of issues, and you can see many of the things that he works with on his bio page on the website. And in his work with clients, he draws from a variety of therapeutic approaches to address the unique need of each client and family that he works with. Nicholas has extensive experience working in the area of addictions, particularly with adolescents, including 7 years in a residential treatment facility in which he worked. And he has helped countless clients and families who've struggled with their use of technology. And he is sharing some of that expertise with us this evening. Nicholas's presentation is about 45 minutes long. And after that point, we'll still have some time in the hour. And Nicholas has said he'll stick around for some questions. If you have any technical issues or comments along the way, I'll be keeping my eye on the chat. And there's also a Q&A button that you can see along the bottom of your screen. If you have questions for Nicholas afterwards, you can put them in there, and I'll come back at that time and we'll have a bit of discussion. But for now, I will turn it over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for the introduction, and thank you to everybody for joining me this evening. I cannot ignore the irony of doing a talk on screen addiction over video. When I first did this talk a couple of years ago, I was expecting that technology use was going to increase. I did not expect to find ourselves in a pandemic where we almost overnight had to very, very quickly adjust and depend on screens as much as we are now. And it's really highlighted the need to reflect on what this technology is doing to us, how it's helped us, but also how it might be influencing us in ways that we don't expect and maybe aren't good for us. I wish we could be doing this in person. It's hard not to be a talking head on video, and things are really enriched when people can participate and tell their stories. But we're going to do the best we can here. I expect some of you are here because of concerns about your kids' tech use, and with good reason. We used to have a lot of rules about what was appropriate to show kids on television shows, in advertising, but those rules have not kept up well with technology, and kids nowadays have almost complete uncontrolled access to information, media, and so many other things online. In my practice, I so often hear stories about the impacts of tech use in the home, hours on their devices, hours in front of a video game console or computer, disengagement from family, and sometimes friends, depression, anxiety, impacts on school performance. The list goes on and on. Disagreements about tech leads to tensions in the home, parents feeling out of control and unsure what to do. But hopefully some people are here tonight for yourselves. Many of us feel antsy when we don't have access to our phones or don't have service. We're on our phones first thing in the morning and right up until we go to sleep at night. And many of us have felt that phantom buzz in our pocket that turns out to be nothing. So I'll just share my screen here. There we go. Little bit of information about me. Again, thank you, Nicole, for the introduction. My name is Nicholas Renaud. I'm a therapist here at Rivers Edge Counseling. Been working in the field for about 15 years, specialized in addiction for 9 of those. And that included working at a residential treatment facility for adolescents with substance use issues. And one of the things I got helped me get interested in this topic was because I kept seeing issues related to technology use at the center. Concerns that parents were raising and concerns that even the teens were raising about their own use. But where I was working, we didn't screen for it. We didn't know very much about it, and we didn't do a very good job of treating it. And that really needed to change. I'm also pretty good with technology. I have a gaming computer, I have several game consoles, and there are not many places that I go without my phone. I'm familiar with technology and its impacts, but even I am not immune to it. So tonight, I'm going to talk about the impact of these technologies: phones, tablets, computers, games, in our homes, schools, workplaces. These technologies have become an ever increasing and often inescapable necessity in our lives. But have they become problematic? Is our increased dependence on technology changing our brains and the brains of our children? I'm hoping that this talk will provide you with some useful information on the compelling nature of digital technologies, potential negative impacts, information on how to reduce the risks, as well as what to do when it becomes problematic. This is a topic that often raises a lot of passion in people. And I want to say right off the bat that technology is bad. It is not bad. I love it. I try to be evidence-based. I haven't included them in my slides just to keep things clean, but I have references for everything I'm presenting this evening. And if you'd like more information on something I've said, you can just ask me. So let's start at the start. What is tech addiction? This is not new. Back in 1981, at the dawn of the technological age, a UK private members bill called the Control of Space Invaders Bill was drafted in an attempt to ban the game for its addictive properties and for causing deviancy. This is a quote right out of the minutes of that session. That is what is happening to our young people. They play truant, miss meals, and give up normal activity to play Space Invaders. They become crazed with eyes glazed, oblivious to everything around them as they play these machines. Sounds a bit familiar. And much later on, in 1995, a psychiatrist proposed the term internet addiction disorder with a set of suggested criteria for diagnosing it. That was a hoax. He created what he thought was a fictitious disorder, but he ended up being flooded with tales of people who identified with this disorder and who were seeking help. Since then, and especially in recent years, research on addiction to technology has exploded. Internet use is essential for the vast proportion of people, and it is not slowing down. We are all internet dependent in the same way that we're dependent on many basic things in life. And because it's widely and extensively used, diagnosing it is difficult. Diagnosing internet addiction, it's inherently more complex than diagnosing other types of addiction. It would be very unusual for someone to spend hours drinking at work, but people don't think twice about someone being on their computer at work all day. Other addictive behaviors like gambling are often seen as antisocial. They have very little socially redeeming value. The internet is perhaps the greatest, most significant creation in all of human history. There's clearly a difference, and screen addiction it's just not as tangible as drug or alcohol problems. The most recent diagnostic and statistical manual, which is used to diagnose mental health disorders, has included a section on behavioral addictions or process addictions. And these are compulsive behaviors that have a net result of harming people. But gambling disorder is the only disorder that is listed under this category. It does discuss addiction to internet gaming, but found more research was needed. whether it qualifies as a disorder doesn't take away from it sometimes being hard to keep under control and ultimately leading to problems. "50% of children and teens report feeling addicted to their smartphones." This is their reporting. Over 40% of teens admit to texting and driving. 54% of teens admit to sending or receiving sexual texts or photos, 26% of which report sharing what they received with other people. And the average teen now spends almost 7 hours on screens each day, and it has been inching up every year. So why is it so addictive? The short answer is that it's because it's meant to be. Tech used to be a passive tool, something that we used when we needed it, but now it actively pulls you in, and it's become really good at keeping you hooked. And unfortunately, it does this with the help of psychology. What is supposed to be healing and promoting health is unfortunately being used to trap you. Persuasive tech is designed to tap into and to take advantage of our basic human needs. Tech companies profit from it, and they have quickly become the most successful companies of all time. How are they making money? They make their money by selling their users. Advertisers are the customers. Our attention, our eyeballs are the product. And their main goals are to increase engagement, get you to invite others, and pepper in just the right amount of influence and advertising. These apps are competing for your attention with each other, but more importantly, with your real life. And they want to keep you engaged for as long and as frequently as possible. We've been trained to engage. We respond to that ping, and we're rewarded with something that taps into our basic human needs. They capitalize on that evolutionary need to connect with others. And you can't ignore it. You get a notification, you've been tagged in a photo, you can't not look at it. Of course you will. And when you do, bam, dopamine hit. And every time it reinforces an unconscious habit. We're programmed without realizing it. And these apps magnify and take advantage of other negative feelings. I think everybody's probably heard of the FOMO, fear of missing out. We're constantly reminded that something always seems to be going on. And when you're not connected, you're left behind. When you're not near your phone, there's that voice in the back of your head wondering what everyone else is up to and if you're missing out on something important. We notice that notification and we have to check. It preys on our insecurities, our self-worth, and our identity. We care about what people think, taps into our innate desire to win acceptance and avoid social rejection. Likes, hearts, comments, they become our sense of value. Social approval is being dosed and makes us ask, what do I have to do to get more? It preys on the lonely. Loneliness is a powerful feeling. It's been associated with increased internet use. Companionship and community are easier to get online and often less anxiety provoking. And even when you're feeling lonely, the distraction of the phone helps us to feel better. And it becomes self-perpetuating. Increased use of the internet often leads to less family communication, reduced size of a real life social circle. Online becomes even more appealing. And tech gives us escape. Imagine you're a teenager and you just don't feel like you quite fit in, or you don't like the way that you look, or live with a dysfunctional family. You hate school, you have no real friends. Wouldn't you escape if you could? Online lives are often better than our own lives. These technologies are constantly available. They're devoted to us. They're highly predictable. They learn our preferences, and they rarely let us down. Even humans with the best intentions can't manage all that. And this has been so successful that often technology has become our emotional pacifiers. When we're lonely, uncomfortable, uncertain, afraid, we have an outlet. And the more we turn to our tech to alleviate those feelings, our own ability to self-soothe lessens. Developers are getting better at it all of the time. They can experiment on users to refine their strategies, testing small changes to see what works. So many users so frequently, they can test thousands of times and perfect that algorithm. They collect a ton of information to help with those predictions and how to help them determine how to keep you engaged, what notifications to send you, what video to recommend, what story to put on your feed. It's not a fair fight. We are more profitable when we're staring at a screen than living an enriching life. It's understanding that we spend so much time online. It's stimulating, interesting, never boring. We can't blame ourselves for wanting to stay online, but understanding these factors is imperative to helping ourselves, helping those who we love. This is something that should be responded to with compassion and understanding, not guilt, not anger, and not control. Tech addiction has impacts. You might ask, so what? So what if this takes advantage of us? So what if it's addictive? So what if we're on it all the time? It helps us stay connected with the people we care about. It allows us to have access to basically all of human knowledge. Research is playing catch up, but it's coming fast and particularly focused on youth and teenagers. Their brains are still developing, and there's real concern about the lasting impacts that this technology exposure might have. Depression and suicide in teenagers has been increasing in recent years, and it seemed to start an upward trend when phones and tablets really started to take off. Teens using screens for more than 7 hours a day were more than twice as likely to be diagnosed with depression or anxiety. And what that research described as moderate use of screens 4 hours a day was also associated with lower psychological well-being. Children are often learning how to use technology before they can talk, before they can walk or read. And these formative years are now very different than they used to be. Screen time is linked to physical changes in the brain, particularly in the frontal lobe where communication, problem solving, and emotion regulation take place. And these changes have been seen in the brains of adults as well. We are not immune to the effects. Sleep's important for so many things as adults and important for development in children, but we know screen time affects sleep, both the onset of sleep and the restfulness of sleep. We're particularly sensitive to the blue light that screens put out. It confuses our brains into thinking it's daylight and messes with our sleep cycle. And we know that screen time affects self-esteem and identity. We're given more information about our friends and strangers than we ever have before. And that gives us a lot of opportunities to socially compare. We compare our lives, which we know every detail about, to their highlight reel. Most people on social media, they post about the good things and they leave out the bad. And this makes us think that their lives are better than they actually are, makes us feel worse about our own lives. Interestingly, social comparison in any direction affects us. It doesn't matter whether a person is making an upward, downward, or a neutral social comparison. When social comparison goes on, it's linked with greater likelihood for depressive symptoms. Being on these apps makes us unhappy. And it affects mood regulation. It seems to affect our ability to regulate our moods. A link has been seen between use of technology and increases in attention, behavior, and self-regulation problems in teens. And when teens use their devices more, they were more likely to have conduct and behavior problems like lying and fighting. Parents sometimes use technology to replace parenting. They use it to help calm a child who is hurt or upset, letting them play a game on the phone instead of actually talking to them or giving them a hug. And children don't learn the skills they need to regulate their own emotions. And coping, video games do not build a sense of resilience or the patience and drive that's needed in the real world. When people lose at a sport, they have to lick their wounds, they have to process the experience and get back on the horse. And this fosters resilience and emotional growth. But when you lose in a video game, it's easy. You hit the reset button and you keep playing. And technology compels us to multitask. Many of us browse when we're watching television, at the dinner table, even when you're with your children. And when you're not directly looking at it, a part of your brain is always listening for that notification. And a lot of us think we're good at multitasking, but research shows us that multitasking divides our attention and we do more poorly than if we're focused. Now, I have been talking about the brain a lot, but screen use can cause physical symptoms as well. A lot of us probably have had that experience of the short-term effects such as headaches or migraines, sensitivity to light, sore neck, dry eyes. But excessive screen use can lead to other physical issues as well. Sedentary lifestyle, poor self-care, poor nutrition, failing to eat or eating properly, in order to avoid being away from the computer. Poor personal hygiene. Studies have shown that increased screen time may result in higher BMI scores in preschoolers, and research have suggested that early screen time use may set the stage for further weight gain later on. And there are social impacts. The impacts are not just on the individual. Misinformation and polarization of ideas have been particularly noticeable lately. Tech companies have very little incentive to give us objective truth. We have a tendency to tune out dissenting opinions and perspectives. So these companies want to give you what will engage you, just what you want and only what you want. And you get stuck in a bubble. You're continuously bombarded with persuasive information that is one-sided. You can't help but feel influenced because you very seldom hear the other side. Truth is boring, lies engage us, and they give us easy answers, and they influence us. And tech companies want this influence. They want to influence our habits, they want to influence our perspectives. Sometimes this is as simple as just getting us to buy something, but the potential is there for much more of that. Influence over us is valuable to people who wish to nudge us all in certain directions. It can be slight, but changing the world even a tiny bit is worth a lot. And there's this interesting trend, social trend, that's sometimes referred to as the digital divide. Families that have access to more resources seem to be using technology less and having their children use it less. If there's long-term impacts of all of this, it looks like it's going to affect those of a lower socioeconomic status more. So we have to use technology every day. So how do we know where the line is? How do you recognize when it's problematic? And there's no real answer about how much is the right amount. What you want to do is you want to pay attention to how you're using it more than how much you're using it. And there's some guidelines, some warning signs that you might want to watch out for to determine if this has become problematic in your own life. If screen time is the main activity that brings you happiness, if it's your main mood booster, that's a real risk because it doesn't do a good job. If you're being sneaky, if you're hiding your use from others, if there's that feeling of shame or that wanting to avoid that social impact or that judgment from family. If it's interfering with relationships, if it's causing conflict or preventing quality time with friends and family or causing you to lose friends. If it's interfering with your daily activities, bedtime, sleep, mealtime, work, getting schoolwork done, if you're online instead of working towards your goals, if you notice that instead of moving towards something that's of value to you, you're spending all of your time online or in front of a screen, that's a problem. And if you're feeling anxious or agitated, if you forget your phone, there's a term, nomophobia. It's been humorously coined when you feel anxiety being without your phone. But what we're really talking about here is withdrawal. So what do you do? COVID has brought some very interesting challenges and opportunities. When it first hit, very quickly, both adults and children were forced to adapt, and many of those adaptations involved technology. Parents are working from home more. Children are doing school at home. They have less freedom to go out with their friends. And technology has stepped up to fill the gap and allow us to keep going and keep connected. So with everyone online more, how can you address it if it's become a problem? And there's a hard truth. It has to be you. You have to be the one to do this. Companies, unfortunately, are not going to do it for you. And it does not seem like regulation is going to come in and keep things healthy and safe for us. So what are some steps you can take to lower your risk and lower the impacts? Treat it like an addiction. Start off with setting realistic goals for yourself. Total abstinence is just not feasible in this case. And it is better to be successful at a small goal and build on it than to fail outright on something that was too difficult to do from the start. Some quick things that you can do. Turn off your notifications. Most notifications are sent by apps and not by people. So turn off all but the messaging notifications. Delete useless accounts. If you're not using it, you don't need to get pinged by it. Monitor and limit your screen time. Monitoring of use is getting built into a lot of these apps now as awareness grows and grows. And there are apps that will help keep track of things over time. Off Time or Menthol are two apps that you can check out if you're interested in this. If there is a certain app that's an issue, abstain from it. Just get that one off of your phone or take your social media off of your phone and access it elsewhere, like a tablet or a laptop, something that you don't have access to all of the time. Keep track of things. Use a journal. How do you feel when you're using technology and not using it? Help recognize the triggers of your use of it. Use external cues to stop. Find some real life events that prompt you to put the phone down. You know, when it's dinner time, put the phone down. When you're getting ready for bed, put the phone down. Use an alarm clock to let you know when it's time to turn off the phone, put the phone down, carry on with some other kind of offline activity. Lean on your friends. Talk to them about what's going on so that they understand and know not to make it worse. Sometimes we can get a social pressure to be always connected. You know, I texted you. Why didn't you respond? If you talk to people and you let them know what you're doing, then they'll have some understanding and they'll know that you aren't going to be immediately accessible anytime that they need. They can also apply a little bit of social pressure too and remind you to keep your goals. Big one, get an alarm clock. Charge your phone outside of the bedroom. A lot of us use our phones as the alarm clock, and having that there, pinging us, buzzing, beeping, whatever it is, makes going to bed, going to sleep really, really challenging. Get creative. I've heard of people who will only use their phone while they're standing. That's a way to kind of limit or discourage their use. Use reminder cards. Like, remind yourself why it is that you're doing what you're doing. What is the cost of overuse? What's the benefits of limiting that use? And make a list of activities that you could do instead when you're feeling bored or when you're feeling low, something that'll help you cope with that time. Reminders of that in the moment are fantastic because it's not always easy to remember them when you need them. And build those coping skills. If your use is tied to negative emotions, find other ways. These approaches, they can be helpful, but success often involves self-reflection. If we're looking at our phones because we're anxious and bad at being alone, limiting the use won't make those feelings go away, and you have to come up with other strategies. Beating any kind of addiction is challenging, and this one is no exception. If you need help, talk to an expert, talk to a therapist, read a book, take the steps that you need to do in order to get this under control. Now, what if you have concerns about a loved one? I always like to recommend that things start at home. Model good behavior. Check your own checking. Kids need consistent, dependable, focused attention. And using a smartphone when you're with your child is withholding something from them that they need. It's okay to answer an urgent text. It's okay to make a quick call, especially if it involves your child. But as much as possible, when you're with them, be with them. Put away the phone. Think about what you're modeling, what you're communicating. Kids watch and they listen and they learn from what you do. You may not be able to control you may be able to control your use better than they can, but they don't have the the development really to understand that difference. Control it better than they could. So modeling good behavior makes it easier for them. These ones are tough to convince people of, but hear me out. Don't reward with screen time. If kids have to earn their screen time, it glorifies the screen time as a reward. It reinforces that tech is a reward and a pacifier. Rewards should really fit with the values of your family. When you want to relax, we value reading more. We go outside. And with young children, you are the biggest reward. Smile, cuddle, shower attention, drop what you're doing, and do something that they want to do. If you need to get back to dinner, set a timer for a designated period of time. If you want to make something positive and you want to make something positive a reward, pair it with something else that's good. If you want them to read more, spend time reading with them. If nothing else, pause for a quick hug or use your words for praise. Don't take away the phone or invade their privacy as punishment unless there is real risk to safety. As adolescents grow up, they want more autonomy and they want more independence. And the restrictive approach is counterproductive. When phones are taken away as punishment, the problem isn't being solved, and kids will look at you as the enemy instead of an ally. They might even suffer real withdrawal symptoms. You're setting yourself up for a dishonest teen because they feel they need that connection and they'll resort to being sneaky to get it. And invasions of privacy. Adolescents especially are human beings and they have an increasing need for privacy. Not respecting that privacy does not teach them how to solve their problems and will just make them sneakier. I want to talk about parental control apps. Now, there's a bunch of apps out there right now that allow you to block or to monitor communications. And this allows you to monitor communications from a distance. You get reports, or you can look into things like what they've been doing online, who they've been texting, what they've been texting. I don't recommend these. It does not build the characteristics and the values that you want in your children. Responsibility for self. On the surface, it seems like the information allows parents to make good decisions, but it often results in parents just deciding to restrict it until their kids learn. Parents are doing the regulating, which makes them feel better, but it doesn't give the kids the chance to regulate themselves. For teens to build self-regulation skills, they need two things. They need self-awareness, what they're doing, and they need strategies to change their behavior. And these apps prevent them from learning about how they're learning about their habits and trying out different solutions. Ultimately, one day your kids are going to be older and any control that you used to have will be gone. They'll be left with whatever agency and self-regulation skills that they've developed. Your goal is to help them develop that now. So think not so much about what you do to control them, but how you can influence them in positive ways. So how do you do that? Well, there's some apps for it. You can use applications that give your children information. Build self-awareness. Allow your child to see the time that they're spent doing certain activities. Apps like Moment, apps like Rescue Time, they monitor time use in apps and provide guidance on how to use them in healthy ways. There's an app called Rethink that monitors messages for offensive language and prompts them to rethink what they're sending. Something to keep in mind too is that the dangers to teenagers in particular sharing and socializing online can feel like a bigger deal than it is. Most teens are better at avoiding mistakes online than you might think. Many are getting smarter about how they present themselves on social media. Sharing things with the world is scary to see when your teen does it, but it is a normal part of teen development. So what do you do if you see something questionable? A photo or a post that is problematic, or if their tech use is impacting other areas of your life? Well, number one, don't panic. Take a deep breath and make a plan how you want to talk to them about it, and talk to them about it in person. This is not the time to talk to them about it over text. Don't just turn off the computer. Don't just disconnect the internet. That makes kids angry. They're not going to listen to you. Ask your teenager about their behavior. Let them explain their thinking. It's going to help to begin the discussion by reminding your child that you love them, that you care about their happiness and well-being. Children oftentimes they interpret questions about their behavior as blame or criticism, and you need to reassure them that you're not condemning them. Don't just say you're gaming too much or you're on the phone too much. Tell them why you're concerned. Tell them what the problem is. Tell them you're concerned about some of the changes you've seen in their behavior, and refer to them specifically. Do they seem tired? Are their grades declining? Are they giving up hobbies? Are they withdrawing socially? Respect their intelligence. Give them solid reasons you're concerned. Invite them to participate in solving the problem. And work with your child to establish appropriate boundaries. Be consistent, stick to your rules, and remember, you're not simply trying to control them, you're working to free them from something that is challenging to let go of. You need to use compassion. Limiting phone privileges is okay in moderation. Prohibiting texting for a period, docking the phone in your room if it's interfering with other tasks, but make this targeted to the behavior. You don't have to take the whole phone away all the time. Delete the specific app for a reasonable amount of time. The goal is to teach them to use their own judgment. Technology is important, and regulating their phone use is something that they need to learn, sometimes by trial and error. You can often feel powerless, but family influence is huge. And it is important to remember this type of addiction is not laziness. Your children get something out of their technology use, things that they need, things that they're just not getting in a healthy way, and coming at them with rules and judgments only serves to shut them down. Have conversations always. Be curious. When was the last time you expressed an interest in what your child was doing online? Teens want to talk to their parents about difficult things, but they often expect that their parents are just going to freak out and make things work. And parents do freak out. These are things that raise a lot of emotions in parents: anger, fear, and these feelings even come out when we're dealing with pretty low risk type of situations. Every time your child comes to you with a question or an issue, be thankful that they still view you as a source of help. Do not waste the opportunity. Always have conversations about technology. There are a ton of ways that you can do this. This is not something that you want to do specifically when you're addressing an issue. You want to integrate this in all of your interactions with your kids. Ask them, do they think tech can be addicting? Discuss what it looks like, what it feels like. What can they do to prevent it? Talk to them about how they're communicating with people online. Talking to them about how silence can be better than saying something, which can be better than writing something, which is better than putting something online. Talk to them about bullying. Have they seen it? What would they do if they were the victim of bullying? What do they do when they see it? Talk to them about privacy. Can they be anonymous online? Do they feel like they can be? What do they do to ensure their privacy? There is a ton of topics that you can talk about. Etiquette around like what's appropriate to post, uh, what when should be screen-free time. Um, there are resources online that you can tap into to help spur on some of these conversations to come up with topics that are appropriate. But again, integrate them into your conversations frequently. And so when something needs to be addressed, it's not unusual. It's not going to come across as criticism. And make a collaborative plan. Discuss with your child their online habits, how they would want to change them. Ask them about their goals and encourage your child to think about how they could change their habits to be in line with what they have in terms of goals for themselves. And use yourself in this. Share information about how you monitor and evaluate and change your technology use. Lead conversations with reflections on your own use. What do your kids think about your tech use? Is there something about it that bothers them? Something about your attitude towards technology that bothers them? Have an open mind, take in their opinion. You can have limits, you can have high expectations, but don't just expect that they will meet them. Give kids the support they need to meet those expectations. Kids benefit when they know what's going to happen, and buy-in is always better when they're involved. So taking the time to discuss appropriate use, establish guidelines, come up with a family agreement is ideal. It's hard to put rules in place after the fact, so doing this early can be great. Now, I will talk about smartphone contracts because I've heard this coming up more and more, where when a parent is wondering about whether or not they can get their kid a smartphone at maybe an early age, one of the things that seems to alleviate some of that concern is discussing with them what appropriate use is going to be and setting up rules. And this is a dangerous justification for giving a kid a smartphone at a young age. Rules have to be developmentally appropriate, and expecting a 10-year-old is going to be able to understand and exhibit self-control with a smartphone is just not developmentally appropriate. Many adults aren't even able to do it. So there's a reason children can't sign contracts. They will agree to anything if it means they get to have a phone. So really think about whether or not they are developmentally at a place where they could follow through with those kind of expectations. Now, if I was to encourage one topic above all others in this presentation, it's to have a family philosophy about tech. What you want to do is you want to have some reflective thought about how your family feels about technology, and your technology use should reflect your values. What place does it hold in your lives? What are the rules? Are they clear? Everybody should have personal house rules that cover where technology lives, like not in the bedroom, not during meals, when it should be used, when it should not be used. 30 minutes of gadget-free transition time before hitting the hay. Make your bedroom a technology-free zone. Keep electronics out of the room, including a television. They need to be clear and they need to be consistent. And it allows you to offload a little bit of the responsibility of being the bad guy. If the rules are set out and they fit with values that are understood in the family, then when issues arise, you can say, that's not something we value in the house. We value connection with each other. We value downtime. We value an opportunity to be a family and to discuss things over dinner or whatever it is. Discuss and decide with your family, involve them, everybody in that discussion, and discuss the consequences for not following the rules. Losing their phone for a day or two is one consequence. Long consequences are not particularly effective. Kids do not do a very good job of seeing into the future and imagining things in the future. So, a day is just as good as a week, oftentimes. I don't know how many times I've seen parents who have taken phones away for a month, and kids just get used to that. That just becomes their new normal. You lose your leverage, and they usually end up just hating you. If you want your kids to come out from behind a screen, give them a good reason. Engage in things that they enjoy doing. Sitting around watching TV with you and the rest of the family is not a good reason to come out from behind their own screens. When there's something more fulfilling, it's easier for them to turn it off. Make play a priority. Demonstrate that your children are more important than technology when you play with them by leaving the tech somewhere else. They'll remember this when they're older and they have their own technology. Children learn to bond through play, so make it a priority as often as you can. Make conversations and connections a priority. Screen-free zones, making sure that we set time aside to connect and talk as a family. This could be over dinner, and let your children help you with their problems. Help involve them in discussions about issues. Focus your full attention on your children as much as you can. Respect their individuality. Be curious, have an open mind, use empathy and validation, ask a lot of questions, keep positive. Allow your children to be who they are. They are human beings. And this is especially true when it's different from you. Demonstrate interest in their activities on and off screens. Prioritize going outside. Being outside, the benefits are so impressive. It should be a requirement for children. It teaches good lessons. It enriches the soul, decreases depression, promotes healthy sleep, improved moods. And oftentimes being outside is one of the easiest ways for a family to disconnect from their phones and connect to each other. Go to a new environment where you don't even know what year it is. And encourage other healthy activities and hobbies. Physical exercise can really help compensate for the decrease in dopamine levels that happens when you don't have that phone pinging at you. When conflicts arise, try hard to manage them well. Knowing how to resolve conflict is just as important as knowing how to talk to your kids. Teach them how you handle disagreements in the family. Listen to all sides of a disagreement. Attempt to coach instead of solving problems or just dismissing it. You can't dictate how they are going to respond to limits. You expect resistance from them. Expect withdrawal. Leave space for them to navigate those emotions. Give them space if tempers flare, and breathe before you react. If things are too challenging, if things don't work, seek out professional help. You can't police your kids into compliance. You need to focus on teaching them healthy habits and behaviors so they can find that balance on their own. If things do get bad, there are things that you can turn to. Now, the troubling thing about technology is that we're constantly surrounded by it. You're endlessly surrounded by it, and it has taken over most of what we do. It can make it difficult to stop. So some things that you can do if you need help or you have somebody that you love that needs help, self-help groups are a place that you can turn. There are 12-step based groups. Now, unfortunately, many of them are online, the ones that are devoted to technology addiction. Online Gamers Anonymous, Computer Gaming Addicts Anonymous. There were communities like on Reddit, there is a subreddit called Stop Gaming that helps people break that addiction. Addiction treatment centers are recognizing it more and more. They are a bit on the limited side, but that is growing. Engage in family therapy if you need to. A lot of these issues are around family communication and family conflict, and improving those kind of skills can really help address what's underlying and feeding into the technology addiction. There's psychotherapy, talk therapy that you can do. Talking to somebody one-on-one who's got some expertise can be helpful. In conclusion, technology and internet is perhaps the most amazing thing that mankind has ever created, but the world and the people in it should not be neglected. Technology is not going anywhere. It's not getting any less important to our lives. We have to find the healthy balance. Thank you very much for your time. I will pass it back over to Nicole for any questions or discussion. Thank you. You are muted, Nicole.
Hi. Do you want to turn your screen share off? So all of you who are going to say goodbye before the Q&A, I just want to thank you for joining us. And you are welcome to register for any of our upcoming talks as well. I hope you have a great week. And thank you very much, Nicholas. That was a very, very helpful presentation. Yeah, thanks a lot. And anyone who wants to rewatch it or look for other resources, we'll post them on Nicholas's bio page on the website as well. Okay, Nicholas, we have questions. When you mentioned restrictions, you said teens. So someone is asking, what about for younger kids? Can you take the device away?
Yes, I mean, ultimately you can always take the device away, but I think you want to be careful about when and how you're doing that. Certainly, you know, if you're going to do that, you want to have the discussion about it, why it is that you're doing this, what are the specific concerns that you have, and you want to put a time limit on it. Like, this isn't just we're taking this away forever type of a thing. But this really needs to be developmentally appropriate. If there's issues with safety, if there's issues with them, you know, putting something online that's really going to be a problem for them, that's going to have a lasting impact, then you need to intervene. But leading up to that, you want to be focused more on helping them to develop those skills themselves, instead of just removing it altogether.
Thank you. Someone is saying that they have a teenager, a 16-year-old boy, that already has bad habits for gaming and screen time. We haven't managed this well to this point. How do we react effectively now?
I think, you know, this is what I see in my practice a lot of the time, you know, issues that are really well developed and ingrained. And, you know, we're often talking about, you know, kids who have been teenagers who have been using this technology, playing games for years, and it's really ingrained in them that this is like their most enjoyable activity. And it can be really challenging to change their perspectives of it. They get a lot out of this. For a lot of them, it is their main source of entertainment. It is their social connection. That's a huge piece. A lot of them, their social group is online. And so if they want to spend time with their friends, they're getting on the game. And I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record, but I want to go back to having those conversations. What is their perspective of their gaming use or their screen time use? Do they see it impacting any of their areas of their life that are important to them? Teens that I talk to that gaming is a huge part of their life, they oftentimes don't like school. It's not that they don't see it as valuable. It's just that they don't enjoy it. It's not very exciting, and it's difficult for them. And that difficulty does not make them very eager to do it. Homework is not fun for most of them. They see the value, but it's tough for them. And those kind of things need to be addressed a little bit more directly. If they see the value in it, then they're more likely to put the work in. So, again, going back to those conversations, talking to them about what's important to them, what their goals are, trying to get them to think about it. You might not get the answer you're looking for. You might not convince them that, working on school is important in that moment, but are you stirring up those thoughts in them, things that are going to carry with them, that they're going to keep thinking about, planting the seed.
Thanks, Nicholas. Two related questions are around guidelines for what age kids should have cell phones, and what age they should have social media.
Yeah,
Any
this is
thoughts on that?
this is a question I get a lot, and there are guidelines that are put out, but I tend to shy away from those guidelines because I tend to trust a parent's assessment of where their kid is at. And um, I guess one thing that I can say is that pretty much everybody agrees that delaying access to like a smartphone or screen use is better than not. The more delay that you can create or have, the better. So I'm going to shy away from a specific age, but give your kids other things to do. Really encourage them to get involved in some other activities and get involved in those activities yourself. Make make things off screen, offline, more interesting for them.
Makes me think of something that happened to me a couple of years ago. I happened to have a meeting with the health minister, and she came right before a meeting from a conference about technology and kids, and they had a strong recommendation. They should not have cell phones until they're 14. And I had been telling my kids the same thing, and I could not get home quickly enough. And I wrote on that for 2 years. I mean, I don't know if I give you a phone, but the health minister said you should not have a phone. 2 more years.
Offload that responsibility.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah. And how was the response?
They were kind of okay until 14. Although the youngest kids always get things a little bit earlier, but COVID and some anomalies about this time has kind of led us to think that they needed a little earlier. So couldn't use that again exactly in that way. Another question, how do you make time for a game system without making it a reward? Currently, we make our son complete his tutoring time to earn his game time. How would you approach this situation?
I think having that set time to do something else is fantastic. And what I would really recommend is just reframing your perspective on it. It's not reward for doing the chores or the expectations. It's just there is time for this activity that needs to be done, and you can have time for this other activity. So sort of de-emphasizing that, one is a reward for another. It's just that we have a schedule. We have things that need to be done that are important, that need to be prioritized.
It's a great reframe. Yeah. Does watching TV fall into the same category of tech use?
I think so.
No matter what's on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah. TV is different than a lot of the other technologies that we're using now, though, because it is much more a passive process. You just sit and you just consume. Phones, tablets, computers, video games, all of that stuff, they're really engaging activities. You participate in them. And that, in a lot of ways, makes these kind of things more impactful and more influential on us. So there is some differences, but TV definitely falls into that screen time category.
Um, oh, I love this question here. I just lost it here. Is it possible to reverse physical changes in the brain, particularly in preteens?
Yes. So the great thing about brain development is that it doesn't stop until early 20s. So there is, and it doesn't even really stop in the early 20s. It just slows down. So there is always time to reverse these trends. So, the earlier you can address it, the better, but don't ever give up hope.
Um, and if that interests you, I'm going to recommend a book about neuroplasticity, which is what Nicholas is talking about. It is one of the most fascinating um, and important discoveries about the brain that we've ever had, is that ability to change in its structure and its function in response to mental experience. A Canadian actually was as one of the first people who wrote about this, and his name Norman Doig, and he wrote a book called The Brain That Changes Itself that's really accessible in terms of explaining this. And some of it is, he talks about addiction in how it sort of works against the brain, but also you can use it for healing as well. And the next book that he wrote was The Brain's Way of Healing. Anyway, it's really motivating. I find it really motivating around this stuff and around creating change, to know we really can change and rewire our brain and our kids too. So it's not, I know people are writing in the chat, oh, I've done everything wrong. And I was feeling a little bit about that as I was watching, and it can be really overwhelming. So it's pretty cool to know there's still lots of opportunity for their brains to be rewired.
Educating yourself in this kind of thing can really help offload some of the responsibility of this, like to not be the bad guy. You can always say, I've been reading this book and learning about teen brain development, and I really have some concerns about how what you're doing is impacting you. So, like, what do we do about this?
That's great. Yeah, a couple. One other question here. What are some other ways to get dopamine that would normally be obtained from social media notifications? Lots of good sources. That's a good thing.
That's a big question for sure. I mentioned getting outside, which is, getting into nature, moving around, physical activity is a huge one. Of getting away from that sedentary lifestyle, connecting with other people is a big one. The things that bring you joy, the stuff that brings your kids joy. That's the stuff that triggers that and can help replace what's missing when that tech use isn't there. It is a lot easier to forget about your phone when you're sucked into something that you really like doing.
Yeah, it's a great conversation starter with kids to talk about the happiness hormone and what makes you feel that way, and for them to start to recognize that they get, some of that hit through social media, but then also start to recognize other places too. Yeah, because it would be different for all of us. I think we've come. Let me just see. Someone's commented, COVID has given families more time together. I wonder if COVID has led to a decrease in screen time for people and families. Just wondering.
It's an interesting question. I think it's really given parents an opportunity to be present in their kids' lives more, which I think really it gives an opportunity to be away from the screen more. But it's on the other side, we again are depending on technology to help us through this. I mean, talking to family outside of the home, grandparents, whatever, talking to friends, school, work, a lot of that's been done on screens now. And so hard to say, but I think that potential is there if you were to do it.
I keep thinking what a gold mine this COVID experience is for social scientists. They will be researching these things for decades and decades. Yeah. And it'll be really interesting to see what we learn, about how we've spent this time and the impact on us. Someone's asking for that author's name again. It's Martin Doidge, Doidge, and his first book is The Brain That Changes Itself. And I think the second one is The Brain's Way of Healing. As a parent, how do we not feel guilty that if we limit screen time, the kids are not behind with technology compared to society?
Yeah, I hear this a lot too, where parents are really concerned about their kids learning the skills that they need to use technology. And I think if there's concern about that, one of the things that you can do is use the technology with your kids. That being said, a lot of technology nowadays is really intuitive. Kids at a very, very young age very quickly pick up how to use it. And so I don't have a lot of concern about, kind of the basics of technology use, because even if they start at a later age, they're going to pick it up pretty quickly. Some of the more advanced stuff, when I think about some of the skills that might, help them in their careers later on, a lot of those skills are learned in school. They will get the screen time that they need to learn that stuff in the classroom. So, when I think about the people that I know that have delayed that screen use at an early age, kids don't seem to be suffering very much for it.
Thank you. And with that, we've reached the end of our time. So thank you, Nicholas, for all of this information. We're hearing lots of people say thank you, and it was really helpful. Lots of practical suggestions, which as a parent, I really appreciate that, especially. And yeah, so thank you. And thank you to everybody for joining us and spending some time with us this evening. And I hope that we will see you again soon at an upcoming webinar. So take care and have a good week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.